Is the Big Ten the best? Mark Rogers TV's rating the conferences, even though we typically do that in the offseason after all the games have been played. But we were looking at things and considering that about 80-90% of the non-conference games have been played between the Power Five. Hey, let's review how things look. The SEC considered generally by College Football Nation as the best conference, but what do the results on the field say at this point? More games to be played by other conferences, and certainly the postseason is going to say a lot. But in the Big Ten, they've pretty much played all the big non-conference games already. It's now conference time in the Big Ten, and based on results, yes, the Big Ten is the best right now. 8-3 against the Power Five, 30-8 against the Group of Five and FCS. Total non-conference record 30-8. Both of those marks the best in Power Five play. The 8-3 much better than the SEC 6-5 and everyone else. Okay, and the wins are more significant. The Big Ten by far has defeated the best teams in Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Oregon, LSU. The other big game that I would consider a big game on a somewhat national stage would be Pitt-Penn State. Penn State lost that game by 3 at Pitt at Heinz Field. Pitt's probably a better team than Penn State right now, seated higher in the ACC than Penn State is in the Big Ten. So that's an understandable loss. It's not a bad loss. The bad losses would be Iowa to a certain extent, losing to North Dakota State. That's been much talked about across the nation. This is a different FCS program in North Dakota State. It shouldn't be a bad loss in regards to the play on the field, but the perception, because it's a mid-level Big Ten team taking on an FCS, yes, that shouldn't happen, but it did. Other than that, it's the 2 Northwestern losses against FCS schools. Then Northwestern made up for that to a certain extent by defeating Duke in a game that's a comparably seeded matchup. So if you've seen my reviews of conferences and my ratings and rankings of the conferences in the past, seeding means a lot. If Alabama beats Purdue, what does that mean? It's number 1 versus number 14. Like seedings matter. All right, and the Big Ten has performed well in those games. The remaining games, BYU, Michigan State, could cause Sparty some problems. Wake Forest, Indiana, that's going to be lightly regarded, but it's still an ACC Big Ten game of like-seeded teams where we expect them to seed out in their respective conferences. Colorado State takes on Minnesota. The Big Ten, the best on-the-field performance right now. Maybe not necessarily the best recruiting classes or the best transition of talent to the NFL, or maybe not the best postseason. That remains to be seen. But right now at 30-8, 8-3 against the Power Five, the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. Need to hear from you right here on Mark Rogers TV.